Professor Minji stood before the council chamber, her 8 limbs trembling slightly. She had prepared this presentation for weeks, but now that the moment arrived, doubt crept into her mind. The council members sat in their designated sections, each species occupying their preferred environment. Some breathed oxygen like her. Others required different gases pumped through specialized masks. "Professor?" Dean Hyunwoo's crystalline voice echoed through the chamber. His body reflected the light in sharp angles. "You wish to invite a human to our institute?" "Yes, Dean." Minji straightened her posture. "The humans joined the galactic community only 15 years ago. We know very little about their military history. I believe a guest lecturer could provide valuable insights." A council member from the back spoke up. "The humans are primitive. What could they possibly teach our students?" Minji had expected this reaction. "With respect, council member, the humans defeated the Kravix Raiders in the Outer Rim last year. A species we considered primitive destroyed a threat our combined fleet struggled to contain." The chamber fell silent. The Kravix incident remained a sore topic. 3 galactic patrol fleets had failed to stop the raiders. Then a single human warship appeared and ended the conflict in 2 days. Dean Hyunwoo leaned forward. "You make a compelling point. However, the humans are violent. Their history is one continuous war. Do we want such influence in our halls of learning?" "That is precisely why we should invite them," Minji argued. "We have enjoyed peace for 200 years. Our students study warfare as theory, as history, as abstract concepts. The humans understand war as reality. If conflict ever returns to our galaxy, shouldn't our future commanders learn from those who know it best?" The council members murmured among themselves. Minji waited, her heart beating rapidly in her chest. Finally, Dean Hyunwoo spoke. "Very well. The council approves your proposal. Contact the Human Military Command. But Professor Minji, you will be responsible for this guest. If anything goes wrong, it falls upon you." Minji bowed deeply. "Thank you, Dean. I will not disappoint you." 3 weeks later, Minji stood in the docking bay watching the human transport ship connect to the airlock. She had sent the invitation through official diplomatic channels. To her surprise, the humans had responded within hours, accepting enthusiastically. The airlock opened. A human male stepped through, wearing a dark uniform with strange markings. He carried a small bag and looked around the bay with wide eyes. His gaze moved quickly, taking in every detail. Minji noticed how his body tensed when other species walked past. "Staff Sergeant Doyen Park." Minji approached him, extending 2 of her limbs in the human gesture of greeting. The human smiled and shook her limb. His grip was firm but gentle. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for inviting me. I've never been off Earth before, except for Mars and the moon stations." "Welcome to the Galactic Institute of Strategic Studies," Minji said. "I am Professor Minji. I will be your guide during your stay." Doyen looked around again. A group of Kaldreth students walked past, their crystalline bodies chiming softly. He stared openly. "Sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to be rude. I've just never seen so many different species before." Minji found his honesty refreshing. Most visitors pretended such sights were normal to them. "Do not worry. You will see 47 different species here. The Institute draws students from across the galaxy." As they walked through the corridors, Doyun's head turned constantly. He watched Peltharian students floating past on their gas cushions. He studied Arcosian officers with their forearms and sensor antennae. Twice he almost walked into walls because he was looking at something else. "This place is incredible," he said. "My briefing officers told me about aliens, but seeing them in person is completely different." They reached the guest quarters. Minji showed him to his room, a simple space adjusted for human needs. "Oxygen levels, gravity, temperature all set to Earth normal. You will lecture tomorrow," Minji explained. "The students are curious about human military doctrine. Many have read the reports about the Kravix incident." Doyen set his bag down. His expression became serious. "Professor, I need to be honest with you. I'm a Marine. I've seen combat. I'm not a teacher or a diplomat. I know how to fight, how to follow orders, how to keep my people alive. I don't know if that's what your students need to hear." "That is exactly what they need to hear," Minji said. "Our students are brilliant theorists. They can calculate orbital bombardment patterns and analyze supply chain logistics. But none of them have ever faced an enemy. None of them know what war truly means." "You do?" Doyen nodded slowly. "All right then. I'll tell them the truth. But I'm warning you now, Professor, the truth about war isn't pretty. I would expect nothing less, Minji replied. After leaving Doyen to rest, Minji returned to her office. A message waited on her console. She opened it and froze. Commander Yunji's face appeared on the screen. The Arcosian military liaison looked directly at the camera. Professor Minji, I wanted to inform you that your human guest lecture has attracted attention from the War Department. They have expressed interest in observing the proceedings. This is merely routine. Continue as planned. The message ended. Minji stared at the blank screen. The War Department never took interest in academic lectures. They dealt with fleet movements, strategic planning, weapons development. Why would they care about one human giving a talk to students? She tried to push her concerns aside. Perhaps they were simply curious like everyone else. The humans were new to galactic society. Of course, military intelligence would want to learn about them, but something felt wrong. Across the station, in a section Minji could never access, Commander Yunji sat in a secure briefing room. Admiral Kyungmin's image filled the main screen. The Admiral's species, the Nexians, resembled tall insectoids with multiple sensory organs. The human arrives as planned, Yunji reported. Professor Minji suspects nothing. Good. Admiral Kyungmin's mandibles clicked together. The human military is impressive, but we need to understand them better. Are they simply skilled warriors, or are they something more? Something dangerous? What do you want me to do, Admiral? Watch him. Record everything. And be prepared to activate Protocol 7 if I give the order. Yunji felt her stomach tighten. Protocol 7 was not a simple observation protocol. Admiral, Protocol 7 involves live combat scenarios. The students will be fine, the Admiral interrupted. We need to see how the human reacts under pressure. We need to know if humans can be trusted in galactic military operations, or if their violent nature makes them too unpredictable. With respect, Admiral, this seems extreme. Commander Yunji, the humans ended the Kravix threat in 2 days. 2 days. Do you understand what that means? They possess military capabilities we don't comprehend. We must know if they're potential allies or potential threats. This test will give us answers. The connection ended. Yunji sat alone in the dark room. She had her orders, but she didn't like them. Professor Minji had invited a guest lecturer. The War Department had turned it into an intelligence operation. In his quarters, Doyen prepared his lecture notes. He thought about what to say, how to explain humanity's military history to aliens who had never known war. He wanted to be honest but not frightening, informative but not disturbing. He didn't know that every word he spoke tomorrow would be analyzed by military intelligence. He didn't know that his visit was more than a lecture. He didn't know that forces beyond his understanding had plans for him. All Doyen knew was that tomorrow, he would stand before hundreds of alien students and try to explain what it meant to be a human soldier. He had no idea that his explanation would change everything. The grand auditorium held 500 students. Doyen stood backstage looking through a gap in the curtain at the crowd. He had given briefings to his platoon before. He had reported to commanding officers. But he had never spoken to hundreds of aliens before. Professor Minji appeared beside him. Are you ready, Staff Sergeant? As ready as I'll ever be, Doyen said. His hands were sweating. He wiped them on his uniform. Remember, Minji said gently, they are students. They want to learn. Be yourself. The lights dimmed. Minji walked onto the stage and the crowd quieted. Students, faculty, honored guests. Today we have a unique opportunity. Staff Sergeant Doyen Park of the Human Marine Corps has traveled far to share his knowledge with us. Please welcome our guest. Applause filled the auditorium. Doyen walked onto the stage. The lights hit him, and he could barely see the audience beyond the first few rows. He stood at the podium, gripped its edges, and took a breath. Thank you, Professor Minji, he began. His voice sounded loud in his ears. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a teacher. I'm a soldier, so I'm just going to tell you what I know. He activated the display screen behind him. An image of Earth appeared, blue and green and beautiful. This is my home. Humans have lived there for about 300,000 years. For most of that time, we fought each other. Tribes fought tribes. Cities fought cities. Nations fought nations. We have been at war for almost our entire existence. A Peltharian student in the front row raised a tentacle. Excuse me, but did you say your entire existence? Yes, Doyen said. There hasn't been a single year in recorded human history without a war happening somewhere on Earth. The auditorium erupted in whispers. Students turned to each other in shock. Doyen waited for them to settle down. I know that sounds terrible to you, he continued. Professor Minji told me your civilization has been at peace for 200 years. That's amazing. Humans can't imagine that. But our constant warfare taught us things. It taught us how to adapt, how to survive, how to win against impossible odds. He changed the image. Ancient soldiers appeared, carrying swords and shields. This was human warfare 3,000 years ago. We fought with metal blades in our own bodies. Battles killed thousands in a single day. Another image. Soldiers with rifles in trenches. This was 1,000 years ago. We invented guns that could kill from a distance. Wars killed millions. Another image. Modern warships in space. This is today. We fight in space, on planets and cities. We use technology you would recognize. But the principle remains the same. Humans fight to protect what matters to us. A student near the back stood up. Doyen recognized the species as Peltharian, like the first one who had spoken. I am Junho, the student said. I must ask, has your species ever known peace? Doyen considered the question carefully. We have known periods without major wars. But peace for humans doesn't mean the absence of conflict. It means being prepared for the next conflict. We train, we build defenses. We watch for threats. We call it peace, but we're always ready for war. Dean Hyunwoo's voice came from the faculty section. That sounds exhausting. It is, Doyen admitted. But it keeps us alive. He changed the image again. This time it showed tactical diagrams. Human military doctrine focuses on 3 principles: adaptability, overwhelming force, and acceptable losses. The auditorium went silent. Professor Minji leaned forward in her seat. Adaptability means we change our tactics to match the enemy, Doyun explained. If they're strong, we hit them where they're weak. If they're fast, we slow them down. We don't have a single way of fighting. We have thousands of ways. He moved to the next diagram. Overwhelming force means we hit the enemy with everything we have. Not just weapons. Information, supplies, morale, surprise. We attack on every level until they break. A Kaldrith student raised a crystalline arm. And the third principle? Acceptable losses. Doyen paused. This was the hard part. It means we accept that some of our people will die. In war, you can't save everyone. So we calculate. If losing 5 soldiers saves 50, we make that choice. If sacrificing 1 ship destroys an enemy fleet, we do it. The silence in the auditorium felt heavy. Doyen could see the shock on alien faces, the horror in their eyes. I know that sounds cold, he said quietly, but war is cold. War doesn't care about feelings. It only cares about who survives. Professor Minji stood up. Her voice shook slightly. Perhaps we could discuss more positive applications of military strategy. Doyen looked at her. He saw she was trying to help him, trying to make his words less harsh. But he had promised to tell the truth. Professor, with respect, there's nothing positive about military strategy. Strategy exists to kill the enemy before they kill you. That's the reality. He turned back to the audience. You want to know how humans won against the Kravix raiders? We used all 3 principles. We adapted to their tactics. We hit them with overwhelming force from directions they didn't expect. And yes, we accepted losses. 3 of our ships were destroyed. 98 crew members died. But we saved thousands of civilians and stopped the raids. A human student stood up. Doyen hadn't noticed her before. She looked young, maybe 20 years old. I'm Sora, she said. I'm from Earth too. I'm studying diplomacy here. And I'm embarrassed, Doyen frowned. Why? Because you're making humans sound like monsters, Sora said. Her voice was angry. These students come from peaceful species. They don't understand war like we do. You're scaring them. Good, Doyen said flatly. They should be scared. War is scary. If they're going to be military officers, they need to understand what they're getting into. But we're not like that anymore, Sora protested. Humanity has changed. We're part of the galactic community now. We're learning to be peaceful. Doyen shook his head. Sora, I respect what you're trying to do. Diplomacy is important, but it only works when both sides want peace. When they don't, you need people like me, people who know how to fight. Captain Taehyung stood up from the faculty section. The Nexian officer's multiple eyes focused on Doyen. Staff Sergeant, you mentioned that none of us understand war like humans do. Could you elaborate? You study war from books, Doyen said. You analyze historical battles. You run computer simulations. That's all valuable, but it's not the same as being there. War isn't clean tactics and clear objectives. War is chaos. It's noise and fear and confusion. It's making life or death decisions in seconds with incomplete information. He changed the display again. Combat footage appeared. Human soldiers fighting in urban environments. Explosions. Gunfire, screaming. The audience gasped. Several students looked away. Doyen let the footage run for 30 seconds before pausing it. "This is war," he said. "Not simulations. Not theory. Real bullets. Real blood. Real people dying. You can't learn this from a classroom. You have to experience it." Junho, the Peltharian student, stood again. "But how do humans cope with such brutality? How do your soldiers function after seeing such things?" Doyen met his eyes. "Honestly, we don't cope. Not really. Some soldiers break. They can't handle it. They need help, therapy, support. Others adapt. They push the trauma down and keep going. And some, like me, we just accept it. This is what we are. This is what we do." "That's horrible," Junho whispered. "Yes," Doyun agreed. "It is." Professor Minji stood up again. "Perhaps we should take a break. Give everyone time to process this information." But Captain Taehyung waved a limb.
"No, I want to hear more."
"Staff Sergeant, you said humans adapt. Can you give us an example?" Doyen thought for a moment. "On Mars, during the insurgency, we fought in underground tunnels. The enemy knew the tunnels better than us. They had better equipment for underground fighting. Every tactical advantage was theirs. How did you win?" Taehyung asked. "We didn't fight in the tunnels," Doyen said simply. "We collapsed them, sealed the enemy underground, and forced them to surrender or suffocate. It wasn't honorable. It wasn't fair. But it worked." The auditorium was silent again. Doyen could see he had lost some of the audience. They looked at him with fear now, not curiosity. Dean Hyunwoo stood up. "I think we have heard enough for today. Staff Sergeant Park, thank you for your honest perspective." There was polite applause, but it was scattered and weak. Doyen walked off the stage. He had told them the truth. They hadn't liked it. Professor Minji caught up with him in the hallway. "That was intense." "I warned you," Doyen said. "The truth about war isn't pretty. I know. But perhaps you could have been gentler in your delivery." Doyen stopped walking. He turned to face her. "Professor, you invited me here to teach. I taught. If your students can't handle the truth, maybe they shouldn't be military officers." Minji's limbs drooped. She looked tired. "You're right. I just hoped. I don't know what I hoped." In the secure observation room, Admiral Kyungmin watched the lecture recording. Commander Yoonji stood beside him. "The human is more dangerous than we thought," the Admiral said. "He doesn't just understand war. He embodies it. Should we cancel the rest of his visit?" Yoonji asked. "No." Admiral Kyungmin's mandibles clicked. "We need to see more." "Activate Protocol 7. Yoonji felt cold. "Admiral, are you certain?" "Completely. Tomorrow we test the human. For real." Doyen woke to the sound of alarms. He sat up in bed, instantly alert. His military training kicked in before his mind fully processed what was happening. The alarm was loud, rhythmic, urgent. Not a fire alarm. Not a drill tone. Something else. He pulled on his uniform and rushed to the door. The corridor outside was filled with confused students. They moved slowly, talking to each other, looking around with uncertain expressions. No panic, no urgency. Doyen grabbed a passing Kaldrith student. "What's going on?" The crystalline being's surface flickered with colors. "I don't know. The alarm just started. Maybe it's a drill?" "When was the last drill?" Doyen asked. "We don't have drills," the student said, pulling away. "This is an academic facility." Doyen felt ice in his stomach. An alarm with no drills. Students who didn't know how to react. Something was very wrong. Dean Hyunwoo's voice came over the station's communication system. "Attention all personnel. This is a mandatory combat readiness exercise. All students and faculty proceed to designated assembly points. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The students around Doyen started moving faster now, but they still didn't understand. They thought this was some kind of test. Doyen knew better. He had heard that tone in the dean's voice. That was real fear. He pushed through the crowd, moving toward the main auditorium where he had lectured yesterday. That's where most students would gather. As he ran, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Combat drones were activating throughout the station. They emerged from wall panels and ceiling compartments, small hovering machines with weapon ports. They moved into formation, tracking students with targeting sensors. "Everyone stay calm. a faculty member shouted. This is just an exercise. Doyen grabbed the faculty member, a Valorian like Professor Minji. Are those drones carrying live ammunition? Of course not, the faculty member said. They're training units with simulated weapons. Look at the power cores, Doyen said, pointing. Those are active energy cells. Those weapons are live. The faculty member's 8 limbs went rigid. That's impossible. Training protocols don't allow live weapons. A drone rotated toward them. Its targeting laser swept across a group of students. Doyen's instincts screamed at him. He had seen that pattern before. That was a firing solution. Get down. He roared. The drone fired. Energy bolts tore through the space where students had been standing a second before. They had dropped to the floor at Doyen's command, pure instinct responding to the authority in his voice. The bolt struck the wall behind them, leaving scorched marks. Screaming erupted. Students scrambled in all directions. The drones opened fire again, not to kill but to herd. They drove the panicking crowd toward the auditorium. Doyen's mind raced. This wasn't an accident. Someone had activated combat protocols. The drones were following a program, driving everyone to a specific location. Why? He sprinted toward the auditorium, staying low, using the corridor walls for cover. More drones appeared ahead. He analyzed their movement patterns. They were blocking certain routes, leaving others open. They wanted people in the auditorium, but they didn't want casualties. Not yet. Professor Minji appeared around a corner, her 8 limbs moving frantically. Staff Sergeant. What's happening? Someone's running a combat scenario with live weapons, Doyen said. We need to get everyone to safety. The auditorium is the designated safe point, Minji said. We should... No, Doyen interrupted. The auditorium is a killing box. One entrance, limited exits, no cover. Whoever's running this scenario wants everyone gathered there. That's where the real test begins. Test? Minji's voice rose. This is a test? Has to be, Doyen said. The drones are hurting, not killing. They're forcing people into a specific tactical situation. Someone wants to see how we react. They reached the auditorium entrance. Hundreds of students were already inside, pressed together in frightened groups. Faculty members tried to maintain order, but fear spread through the crowd like wildfire. Doyen scanned the room. The auditorium was designed for lectures, not defense. Minimal cover, open sightlines, exposed positions. Exactly what he had feared. Captain Tai-hyung appeared beside him. The Nexian officer's multiple eyes were wide. Staff Sergeant, do you understand what's happening? Yes, Doyen said. We're being tested. Someone activated a combat scenario to see how we respond. The drones will escalate. We need to establish defensive positions now. I don't have combat experience, Tai-hyung admitted. I've only studied tactics. Then it's time for practical lessons, Doyen said. He raised his voice, projecting across the auditorium. Everyone listen to me. We need to organize. Move to the walls. Use the seats for cover. Stay low. Some students obeyed immediately. Others stood frozen. Doyen grabbed the nearest group and physically moved them into position. Seats provide cover. Get behind them now. Professor Minji helped, using her limbs to guide frightened students. Slowly, the chaos began to organize into something resembling defensive positions. Junho, the Peltharian student, floated over. What should I do? Can you move objects with your gas manipulation? Doyen asked. Yes, small objects. Then help create barriers. Stack seats, equipment, anything that can stop energy bolts. Junho moved away, gathering other students with similar abilities. They began constructing makeshift barricades. Sora, the human diplomatic student, appeared. Her face was pale but determined. I'm scared. Good, Doyen said. Fear keeps you alive. Channel it. Help keep people calm. You're trained in communication. Use it. Sora nodded and moved into the crowd, speaking in soothing tones, organizing groups, maintaining morale. The main doors suddenly sealed shut with a heavy clang. Emergency lights activated, bathing everything in red. The drones outside began to converge on the auditorium. Security Chief Minho's voice came over the local speakers. This is Security Chief Minho. I've been locked out of the security systems. Someone else has control. I'm trying to override, but it will take time. Doyen cursed under his breath. Whoever was running this test had complete control of the station's security systems. They could do anything. The ceiling panels opened. More drones descended into the auditorium. Larger models with heavier weapons. They took up positions around the room. Weapons trained on the crowd. A synthetic voice spoke through the drones. Survival scenario activated. Objective: defend this position for 30 minutes. Hostile forces will attempt to breach your perimeter. Casualties will be treated as real. Begin. This is insane, Professor Minji shouted. We're academics, not soldiers. Right now you're targets, Doyen said. And if we don't work together, people will die. The first wave of enemy drones burst through the side entrances. They looked different from the station's security drones. More aggressive designs. Military-grade equipment. They opened fire immediately. Doyen moved without thinking. His body remembered every drill, every firefight, every moment of combat training. He grabbed a piece of debris and threw it at a drone, disrupting its targeting. The drone's shot went wide. Cover! He shouted. Return fire with anything you can throw. Students picked up seats, equipment, anything loose. They threw objects at the drones. It wasn't much, but it disrupted their targeting systems. Captain Taehyung organized a group of stronger students. They created a shield wall using heavy furniture, blocking one entrance. The drone's weapons couldn't penetrate the thick material. Good, Doyen called out. That's one entrance secured. Now the others. A drone got through the defenses and fired into a group of students. 3 went down, screaming. They weren't dead, Doyen realized. The weapons were set to stun, not kill. Painful but not lethal. That confirmed his theory. This was a test, not an execution. But test or not, his people were getting hurt. He analyzed the drone's attack pattern. They were following a program, predictable movements, standard tactical formations. They expected trained soldiers responding with weapons and coordination. They didn't expect improvisation. Listen up, Doyen shouted. These drones are programmed for conventional warfare. We need to be unconventional. Use the environment. Break their patterns. Make them confused. Junyo and his group began using their gas manipulation to create air currents. The currents disrupted the drone's flight paths, sending them spinning out of control. Sora organized students with technical skills. They accessed wall panels and began disrupting the local power grid. Lights flickered. Some drones lost coordination. A Kaldreth student discovered that the drone's sensors couldn't penetrate crystalline structures. He and others of his species formed a mobile barrier, reflecting targeting lasers and confusing the enemy systems. Professor Minji, despite her fear, moved through the crowd, helping wounded students, organizing medical assistance, refusing to hide. The drones adapted, changing tactics. They began coordinating their attacks, focusing fire on weak points in the defense. Students went down in groups now. The stun setting didn't make the pain less real. Screams filled the auditorium. Doyen's mind raced. They needed to end this, not just survive. Surviving meant more casualties. They needed to stop the source. He grabbed Captain Taehyung. These drones are being controlled from somewhere. Find the signal source. I'm going after it. You'll be killed. Taehyung protested. No, Doyen said. They want to see what I'll do under pressure. They won't kill me. Not yet. Doyen crawled through the ventilation system, his body pressed flat against the cold metal. Every movement was careful, silent. Below him, security drones patrolled the corridors, searching for him. Their sensors swept back and forth, but they never looked up. Just like he had predicted, he reached an intersection in the duct system. 3 paths. He pressed his ear to the metal, listening. Air flowed from the left path, warm and regulated. That meant it connected to occupied spaces. The command center. He crawled left, moving slowly. His uniform was soaked with sweat. The confined space made it hard to breathe. But he kept going. In the Marines, they had trained in worse conditions. Through the ventilation slits, he could see different rooms passing below. Storage areas. Equipment base. Server rooms. Then he saw what he was looking for. The command center. He stopped at a vent directly above the main operations floor. Below, Admiral Kyungmin stood watching multiple screens. Commander Yoonji was there, along with several technical operators. They monitored the auditorium, tracking every student, every drone, every movement. Status report. Admiral Kyungmin ordered. The defensive position is holding, an operator replied. Student casualties are within acceptable parameters. 37 stunned, none seriously injured. And the human? Still tracking. He's moving through maintenance areas. Wait. The operator's voice changed. We've lost him. He's avoiding sensor coverage. Admiral Kyungmin's mandibles clicked together. Predictable. The human recognized this as a test. Now he's trying to stop it at the source. Increase drone deployment. I want him found. Commander Yunji stepped forward. Admiral, this has gone far enough. Students are injured. The human is somewhere in the station's infrastructure. We have our data. We should end this. No, the Admiral said firmly. This is exactly what we needed to see. The human doesn't just react to threats. He hunts them. He takes the initiative. This is valuable intelligence. It's also dangerous, Yunji argued. If he reaches this command center, he won't, Admiral Kyungmin interrupted. We have 12 combat drones between him and this location. Even a trained human soldier can't overcome those odds. Above them, pressed against the vent, Doyun smiled. They were wrong about the odds. He carefully removed the vent cover using a small tool from his belt. Marines always carried tools. You never knew when you'd need to improvise. He set the cover aside silently and looked down into the room. 12 meters. A drop that would hurt but not kill. The operators were focused on their screens. The Admiral and Commander Yunji were arguing. No one was looking up. Doyun reviewed his options. He could drop down, but then what? He was unarmed. The command center would be sealed. The drones would arrive in seconds. He needed a different approach. He spotted a control panel on the wall. It managed the room's environmental systems. Every station room had one, standard galactic design, and Doyun had studied station schematics during his trip here. He knew what that panel could do. He pulled out his multi-tool and extended a thin wire. Very carefully, he fed it through the vent, down to the panel. The wire had a magnetic tip. It attached to the panel's surface. Then he sent an electrical pulse through the wire. The panel sparked. Alarms blared in the command center. The room's lights flickered. What's happening? Admiral Kyungmin demanded. Environmental system failure, an operator said. Something's wrong with the air recyclers. Fix it. 2 operators rushed to the panel. They opened it, examining the circuits. They didn't notice the thin wire hanging from the ceiling. Doyun waited. Patience was part of being a soldier. Wait for the right moment. Don't rush. One operator reached into the panel to reset the system. Doyun sent another pulse. The operator jumped back as sparks flew. The panel's cover fell off, clattering to the floor. Now the internal circuits were exposed. Perfect. Doyun dropped the wire completely. It fell into the open panel, shorting out the environmental controls. The room's air recycling shut down. Backup systems activated, rerouting air through secondary vents, including the vent where Doyun waited. The sudden increase in air pressure gave him exactly what he needed. He wedged his body against the duct walls and let the pressure build. Then he kicked the vent cover away and dropped. He fell 12 meters, rolling as he hit the ground to absorb the impact. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he ignored it. He came up running, heading straight for the main control console. Drones entered the room from multiple entrances, weapons charging. But Doyun was faster. He reached the console and slammed his fist down on the emergency shutdown. Nothing happened. Of course not. That would be too easy. Admiral Kyungmin's voice was cold. Staff Sergeant Park, you've demonstrated remarkable initiative, but you cannot shut down this system. You don't have the access codes. Doyun looked at the Admiral, then at the console, then at Commander Yunji. She stood frozen, horror on her face. You're right, Doyun said. I don't have the codes, but I don't need them. He grabbed a heavy piece of equipment from a nearby station and threw it at the main power conduit. The conduit shattered, sparks flying. Emergency power kicked in, but half the systems went dark. Alarms blared throughout the station. The combat scenario froze. Drones stopped mid-attack. The auditorium's emergency protocols activated, unlocking all doors. Admiral Kyungmin made a gesture. The drones in the command center trained their weapons on Doyun. Stop, Commander Yunji said, stepping between the drones and Doyun. This is over, Admiral. He won. The Admiral's mandibles clicked angrily. He destroyed station property. He compromised secure systems. He did exactly what any good soldier would do, Yunji interrupted. He identified the threat and neutralized it. That's what you wanted to see, isn't it? You wanted to test if humans could handle combat situations. Well, now you know. Security Chief Minho burst into the command center with a squad of actual security personnel. What's going on here? I've got injured students, damaged systems, and unauthorized combat protocols running throughout the station. Admiral Kyungmin drew himself up. This was a sanctioned military exercise. Sanctioned by whom? Mino demanded. I'm the security chief. No one authorized this with me. The War Department doesn't have authority over an academic facility, Minho interrupted. And putting students in danger without proper safety protocols is criminal, Admiral or not. Doyen stood quietly, watching the argument. His shoulder throbbed where he had landed. His hands were cut from the duct crawl, but he was alive and so were the students. Commander Unji approached him. Staff Sergeant, are you injured? Nothing serious, Doyen said. What about the students? Being treated. Stun weapons cause pain but no permanent damage. They'll recover. Good. Doyen looked at Admiral Kyungmin. Was this what you wanted? To see if humans are dangerous? The Admiral met his gaze. We needed to understand your species' capabilities. Then understand this, Doyen said, his voice hard. Humans are dangerous. We've been fighting for thousands of years. We know how to kill, how to survive, how to win. But we also know when to fight and when not to. You put students in danger for a test. That wasn't warfare. That was cruelty. You don't understand the bigger picture, Admiral Kyungmin said. The galaxy needs to know if humans can be trusted with military responsibilities. So you tested me by hurting kids? Doyen's anger grew. Those students aren't soldiers. They're students. They came here to learn, not to be your guinea pigs. In the auditorium, the students were emerging from their defensive positions. Many were crying. Some were helping injured friends. Captain Taehyung moved through the crowd organizing medical assistance. Professor Minji found Junho collapsed against a wall. The Peltharian student was shaking. I froze, he whispered. When the drones came, I couldn't move. I just floated there, terrified. But you didn't stay frozen, Minji said gently. You helped build barriers. You disrupted the drones with air currents. You adapted. The human told us we would have to adapt, Junho said. I didn't believe him. I thought it was just talk. Sora appeared, her diplomatic training helping her maintain calm despite her fear. Is everyone accounted for? Almost, Captain Taehyung said. Where's Staff Sergeant Park? He left, Sora said. He went after the source of the attack. Alone? Professor Minji's limbs trembled. He could be killed. No, Captain Taehyung said. He knew what he was doing. This was a test. The human recognized it immediately. While we defended, he went on the offensive. A group of Kaldrith students approached, their crystalline bodies showing stress fractures from the energy weapons, but they had survived, protecting others with their reflective properties. That human saved us, one said. His instructions, his tactics. Without him, we would have panicked and many would have been seriously injured. In the command center, Dean Hyunwoo arrived, his crystalline body reflecting his fury. Admiral Kyungmin, you have violated every protocol. You put my students in danger. You used live weapons in an academic facility. I did what was necessary, the Admiral interrupted. The humans are a military unknown. We needed data. You needed data, so you terrorized students? Dean Hyunwoo turned to Security Chief Minho. Arrest him. You can't arrest me, Admiral Kyungmin said. I'm a flag officer in the Galactic Defense Force. And this is an academic institution, Dean Hyunwoo said. Your authority ends where mine begins. Security Chief, remove him. 3 days after the incident, the Institute held a formal inquiry. Representatives from 12 different species sat in judgment. Admiral Kyungmin stood before them, his insectoid body rigid with controlled anger. Commander Unji stood beside him, accepting her share of responsibility. Doyen sat in the gallery with Professor Minji. He wore his dress uniform, medals displayed. The inquiry had called him as a witness. The head judge, an elderly Valorian named Counselor Yuna, spoke. Admiral Kyungmin, you authorized a combat exercise using live weapons on an academic station without proper authorization. 37 students were injured. Station systems were damaged. Explain your actions. The human military represents an unknown element in galactic affairs, Admiral Kyungmin said. His voice was steady, unapologetic. They defeated the Kravix raiders using tactics we don't understand. They possess a level of military sophistication that contradicts their primitive technology. We needed to assess whether humans could be integrated into galactic defense structures or whether they represent a threat. So you terrorized students to gather intelligence? Counselor Yuna's limbs showed her disgust. I conducted a necessary evaluation. The results were valuable. And what did you learn, Admiral? Admiral Kyungmin turned to look at Doyun. I learned that humans are more dangerous than our projections suggested, but also more valuable. Staff Sergeant Park demonstrated tactical thinking, leadership, and combat effectiveness far beyond what we expected from a junior enlisted soldier. Under pressure, he protected civilians, organized defensive positions, and neutralized the threat at its source. All without weapons, without support, in an unfamiliar environment, the gallery murmured. Doyen kept his expression neutral. You praise the human, Counselor Yuna said, yet your test put him and others in danger. War puts everyone in danger, Admiral Kyungmin replied. Better to test them in a controlled scenario than discover their weaknesses in real combat. Except your scenario wasn't controlled, Commander Yoonji spoke up. It escalated beyond safe parameters. Students were genuinely terrified. Some will need psychological treatment. That's regrettable, the Admiral said, but reality is harsh. If we ever face real combat again, those students will need that experience. Dean Hyunwoo stood from his seat in the gallery. With permission, Counselor. Speak, Dean Hyunwoo. The Admiral's logic is flawed. Yes, military officers need combat experience. But this is an academic institution. We have protocols, safety measures, ethical guidelines. Admiral Kyungmin violated all of them. He treated our students as experimental subjects, not as sentient beings deserving of respect and protection. The judges consulted among themselves quietly. Finally, Counselor Yuna spoke. Admiral Kyungmin, this council finds your actions reckless and unauthorized. You are hereby removed from active duty pending a full military investigation. Commander Unji, you are reprimanded for following unlawful orders. This inquiry is adjourned. As the crowd filed out, Doyen felt a tap on his shoulder. Captain Taehyung stood there with several students, including Junho and Sora. Staff Sergeant, Taehyung said, we wanted to thank you properly. No thanks necessary, Doyen said. I did what anyone would do. No, Junho said. You did what a soldier would do. The rest of us panicked. You acted, Sora stepped forward. I spoke with my family on Earth. My father was in the Marines, too. He said you did him proud. You represented humanity well. Doyen felt uncomfortable with the praise. I just followed my training. Exactly, Captain Taehyung said. And your training saved lives. We want to learn more. Professor Minji is proposing a new curriculum, practical combat training. We'd like you to stay and teach it. Professor Minji's limbs gestured agreement. The Institute Council has approved the proposal. We need someone who understands real warfare, not just theory. Someone who can teach our students to survive, not just to analyze. Will you accept? Doyen looked at the eager faces around him. These students had been through trauma, but they hadn't broken. They had adapted just like he had taught them. I'm not a teacher, he said. You proved otherwise, Minji said gently. You taught under the worst possible conditions. Imagine what you could do with proper time and resources. Before Doyen could answer, Security Chief Minho approached. Staff Sergeant Park, Admiral Kyungmin wants to speak with you. Privately. Doyen followed Minho to a small meeting room. Admiral Kyungmin waited there alone, his military bearing unchanged despite his removal from duty. Staff Sergeant, the Admiral said. I owe you an explanation. I don't need one, Doyen said coldly. You put students at risk for a test. That's all I need to know. You're angry, I understand. But I want you to understand my perspective. The Admiral gestured to a chair. Doyen remained standing. The galaxy has been at peace for 200 years, Admiral Kyungmin continued. Our militaries are ceremonial. Our weapons are outdated. Our tactics are theoretical. We've forgotten how to fight. Then your species appears fresh from constant warfare and effortlessly defeats a threat we struggled with. That terrifies the galactic leadership. So you tested me to see if we're a threat, Doyen said. I tested you to see if you're an asset, the Admiral corrected. There's a difference. Threats must be neutralized. Assets must be cultivated. I'm not interested in your politics, but you should be, Admiral Kyungmin said, because the Kravix raiders weren't a random occurrence. They were a probe. Someone's testing our defenses, measuring our capabilities. The 200 years of peace are ending, Staff Sergeant. War is coming back to the galaxy, and when it arrives, we need people like you. Doyen felt cold. You don't know that war is coming. I'm the head of galactic intelligence, the Admiral said. I know exactly what's coming. Why do you think I risked my career to test you? I needed to know if humans could help us survive what's ahead. And what is ahead? Admiral Kyungmin was silent for a moment. Then he said, I can't tell you details. Not yet, but I can tell you this. The Kraviks have allies, powerful allies, and they're building an invasion force. When they come, the peaceful species of the galaxy won't be able to stop them. But you could. Humans could. One human can't stop an invasion, Doyen said. No, but one human can teach thousands of soldiers how to fight, how to adapt, how to survive. The Admiral stepped closer. That's what I learned from my test, Staff Sergeant. You're not just a soldier. You're a force multiplier. You made untrained students into effective defenders in minutes. Imagine what you could do with months, years. I'm one person, Doyen said. The human military has millions. And how many of them would come here to teach? The Admiral asked. How many would dedicate themselves to preparing alien species for war? You're already here. You've already proven yourself. Stay. Teach. Help us prepare for what's coming. Doyen looked at the Admiral's insectoid face, trying to read his intentions. You put students in danger for this? I put them in a controlled environment with non-lethal weapons and a trained human soldier present, the Admiral said. Yes, they were scared. Yes, some were hurt. But all of them survived, and all of them learned. When real war comes, that experience might save their lives. That doesn't excuse your methods. No, the Admiral agreed. It doesn't. I crossed ethical lines. I'll accept my punishment, but I'd do it again if I had to, because the alternative is worse. The alternative is sending unprepared soldiers into real combat where they'll die by the thousands. Doyen was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, I need to think about this. Take your time, Admiral Kyungmin said, but not too much time. War doesn't wait for anyone to be ready. That evening, Doyen walked through the Institute's observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before him. Somewhere out there, Earth was a tiny blue dot. His home, his people. Professor Minji found him there, contemplating the universe. Contemplating the future, Doyen said. Have you decided about the teaching position? I don't know. Doyen turned to face her. Professor, can I ask you something? Why did you invite me here? Minji's limbs gestured thoughtfully. I studied human military history. Your species has survived impossible odds repeatedly. I wanted to understand how. I thought bringing a human here would help my students understand warfare better. Did it work? Too well, Minji admitted. They're frightened now. But they're also determined. Before they studied war as abstract theory. Now they understand it's real. That knowledge will shape their entire careers. Is that good or bad? Both, Minji said. Fear can paralyze or motivate. I hope it motivates them. Doyen looked back at the stars. The Admiral told me war is coming. Do you believe him? I believe something is coming, Minji said. The Kraviks' attack was unusual. They had never come so deep into civilized space before, and they retreated too easily once you defeated them. It felt like a test, Doyen finished. They were measuring your response time, your tactics, your capabilities. Yes, and we failed that test. You passed it. One victory doesn't mean anything. It means something to the students you saved, Minji said. It means something to the faculty who watched you take charge. It means something to me. Doyen smiled slightly. You're trying to convince me to stay. Yes, Minji said honestly, because I think you're needed here. Not just as a teacher, as a bridge between humanity and the galaxy. We're different species, different cultures, different ways of thinking.